Hi everyone, and welcome to part 3 of my huge summer book haul. So in part 1 I covered non-fiction and graphic novels and manga. In part 2 I covered young adult, and in this part I will be covering adult books, but more like fantasy and detective stories, because I will also have part 4, which will be modern classics and contemporary. So let's just get on with it. And the first book that I have here is actually a release of June, and this is A Study in Sable by Mercedes Lackey. Mercedes Lackey is one of those very well-known fantasy writers, I would say probably back from the 80s, and I do own one of her books, which I've had for about 10 years, have never read it just because I had a bit of a trouble with the language. She's very well known for several of her fantasy series, some of which are adult and others are young adult series, but this one is more like it's a standalone, even though it's part of the Elemental Masters novels. This one in particular is set in London, and there is like a wizard school, plus it has to do, and yes, you might even recognize who we have on the cover, it has to do with Sherlock Holmes and 221B Baker Street, which obviously is something which attracted me immediately to this novel. Plus, I know that she writes really well, even though back in the day I had a bit of a trouble with her language. I still am very excited to have this book. I did pre-order it, and unfortunately all of her books come in mass market paperbacks, which really brings me back to those 80s fantasy novels. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one. I'm not sure when exactly this will happen. Oh my god, I cannot talk today. Well, in my defense, it's almost 9 p.m. so yeah, so I don't know when I will get to this one, but I'm definitely excited to own it. Next, I have another mass market paperback, and this is Paul Cornell's The Severed Streets. I'm not even sure if he's Paul Cornell or Paul Cornell. I believe I call him Paul Cornell when I was hauling his book number 1, which is London Falling. And I have not read London Falling just because I've been hunting for book number 2 in mass market paperback, and I was absolutely sure that I will never find it, so I will never read book number 1 because I have this weird thing in my brain that does not allow me to read a book unless I have a sequel to it. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But anyway, this is urban fantasy, and it's supposed to be a bit dark and also supposed to have a queer character in it. No, nothing else. Sorry, but I'm so excited to have this as a mass market paperback finally. I believe I got it from Book Outlet as well. Next, I have a book which really excited me, and this is Trementina by Ellen Kushner and a whole bunch of other authors. This is I don't want to say this is an anthology because it is not, but initially Ellen Kushner was releasing her Trementina series as separate episodes on Kindle, and I did purchase 1 and 2, I believe, but then she announced that she'll be producing all of those as like in a binder, so this is like one book, pretty thick, I must say, and it came out this summer. I was super excited when she announced it, and I do follow her on all social media, I believe. And if you don't know about Ellen Kushner, she's a fantasy writer, and together with her wife, Delia Sherman, she wrote first she wrote Swords Point, and that was book number 1. I believe it's called Riverdale series. The book number 1 was Swords Point. It was named as a very prominent for like fantasy novel or novel of manners, I believe. So that book was written back in the day, maybe 20 years ago. Then there was a sequel, The Fall of the Kings. Then there was another book in the series. She wrote some short stories set like in the same world about those characters, but she never really continued with the series until she started this series which is set in the same world, but I don't think it has the same characters. However, Ellen Kushner is one of my I would say all-time favorite authors. The way she wrote Swords Point was just heartbreaking. I love that novel, and I did recommend her books in my epic fantasy or old underappreciated fantasy video, which I'm going to link down below. It's one of my very first videos, so be gentle on me, it's not very good, but I love Ellen Kushner and I do recommend you check her out. This is the series I'm super excited about. I have been meaning to reread all of her books. So yeah, anyway, super excited to have this in physical form because I was getting a bit upset about the fact that I have to go and purchase every single episode separately. I'm like one of those people who prefer to have everything in physical form or everything together like one binder. So I got it, and look at this cover. Next, I have another new release, and oh my god, I cannot believe I'm actually hauling a lot of books that were released this summer. And this is Lost Boy by Christina Henry. Christina Henry is probably well known for her Alice series. It was a duology, Alice and Red Queen, I believe. I only have Alice, and all she does is that she takes fairy tales and retells them as horror stories. Alice is pretty horrific. I have not read that book, really no excuse, just because I never got around to it. But when I learned that she released a new book which was about Peter Pan, as you can tell from the cover, as a horror story, I was like, yes please, I need it right now in my life. Why? Because after reading the retelling, or rather a sequel to Peter Pan by, oh my god, Austen. Oh my god, I cannot believe I forgot the name of the author. So ever since I read Peter Darling by Austen Chant, I was just obsessed with various retellings of Peter Pan. I went on Amazon, particularly into Kindle store, and started looking, but there are not that many retellings of Peter Pan specifically. And when I found out that Christina was releasing the retelling, her own retelling of Peter Pan, I had to pre-order it. So unfortunately, my first book by Christina, Alice, is in UK edition, and this one is US because I couldn't find a UK edition, but hopefully they will not, you know, differ too much because I want them all to match, and they're all pretty gory and weird, which I really like. So hopefully I'll get to it very soon. It's not a very big book. It's less than 300 pages, but next I have a copy of Murder is a Fine Art by David Morrell, and I believe it's book number 1 in his Victorian London mystery novels. And I've been meaning to get my hands on this book for a while. I think I got it from Book Outlet, but I'm really excited to have it in as a paperback because I think I saw the hardback edition at Indigo and it was just humongous, so I'm very excited to have it. I've been on a huge binge buying streak when it comes to Victorian London and anything remotely reminiscent of Sherlock Holmes, so definitely something that I will probably enjoy. I don't know anything about it, and I don't want to know anything about it because Victorian London and mystery and detective is all I need to know to buy a book. Yep. Next, I have a book which you have probably already seen in one of my Sherlocked vlogs, and this is Sherlock Holmes, The Breath of God by Guy Adams. This is the book that I got in LA, and I was just in such a mood to get something from LA, like a Sherlock Holmes related book, so I went to Barnes & Noble and this is what I got there. Obviously, it is his take on Sherlock Holmes, and this one is supposed to have some supernatural elements to it. So yeah, I don't really know anything else, but I mean, who cares? Sherlock Holmes pastiches, yay! Next, I have 2 books that I've been meaning to buy for a very long time. I've had them on my wish list at Amazon for a while, and I just couldn't find the suitable copy because these books were printed in the UK and were out of print in US or not even available in UK. I don't even remember where I got it from. I think it might have been Book Depository. And this is both books by Mark Gatiss, The Devil in Amber and oops. This is Devil in Amber and Black Butterfly, which are books 2 and 3 in his Lucifer Box trilogy or series. So you all know Mark Gatiss from Sherlock, and he wrote these books about a detective, and I just, what else do you need? It's written by Mark Gatiss, and ever since I saw him like in person at Sherlock, I'm like low-key obsessed because he is so funny, he's hilarious, he's witty, and someone asked him whether he will get his books on TV, And he said, well, I think we have like enough of TV shows about detectives or something of the sort. But I finally got my own copies and they're in decent shape, and I'm very excited about this fact. Next, I have another book about Sherlock Holmes, and this one was a bit of a spontaneous purchase because I was basically Googling different Sherlock Holmes anthologies and pastiches, and this book came up in my search. So when I went to Book Outlet, I saw that it was in stock and I purchased it, but when I got it, and this is the book that I'm talking about, this is Big Book of Sherlock Holmes stories, and it includes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle, Laurie R. King, Colin Dexter, Anthony Burgess, Anna Perry, Stephen King, P.G. Wodehouse, Neil Gaiman, Kingsley Amis, and many more. So I'm pretty sure I have read some of these books. But like I was saying, when I got this book, I was a bit disappointed because, and I'm going to show you why. This is how the text is positioned on the page. So it's in 2 columns, which I absolutely hate. I cannot really read books like this. That's why I always had, and the font is pretty tiny. I do understand it's an anthology, that's why probably there was no other way to go around it. It has a huge amount of pages. Like, look at this. It's over 700 pages and it's 2 columns of text. Oh my god. Obviously, it is a behemoth, and I would love to read all of these stories. It says it has over, 50 stories? How many stories it has? Well, anyway, it has a lot of stories, and I'm looking forward to reading it. However, I don't like the fact that the page is done like that, but it just reminds me of a Bible or like a scientific text, neither of which is very exciting. But I'm happy to have some of those stories finally in print. And how old is this book, actually? It's so dusty. Oh, it was only printed in 2015, but it looks like a very old book. I don't know, it's very dusty. And the last but definitely not least is the book that I've been umming about for a while, and this is her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger. Audrey Niffenegger is very well known for her book The Time Traveler's Wife, which I read years ago and absolutely loved. And this book doesn't have that many great reviews, but I was kind of interested in reading it. It is also magical realism. It is also about 2 twins who go to their aunt's, I believe, yeah, they're 20-year-old sisters. Okay, I should probably just read the blurb because you cannot summarize it. Julia and Valentina Poole are 20-year-old sisters with an intense attachment to each other. One morning, the mailman delivers a thick envelope to their house in the suburbs of Chicago. Their English aunt, Asper Noblin, has died of cancer and left them her London apartment. There are 2 conditions for this inheritance: that they live in the flat for a year before they sell it, and that their parents not enter it. Julia and Valentina are twins. So were the girls Elspeth and their mother Eddie. So anyway, this is the story about twins and inheritance and some weird shit happening, and I'm excited to read it, especially since Becca said that she will read it with me, and it has a very pretty font for the chapter titles, and I'm digging it. And also I like the shape and the feel of this book, and I like this cover better than another one. Another one has like 2 creepy twins on it. This one is better, so I'm looking forward to reading it. Okay, these are all adult books that I got. I have more adult books on the way in my 4th installment of this huge summer book haul. But this is all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in part 4. Bye! Hi everyone, and welcome to I believe it's called Riverdale. Someone in the audience at Sherlock actually asked him whether he will ever get his series on the screen, and he said, well, Siri, I'm not talking to you.
Hello there, Nika.
Shut up.